been taking my time. I feel like I'm out of my mind. It feel like my life ain't mine.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Project Mayday. These are your hosts G and Bree, and today we have someone very unique for you. She's 36 years old, living in Nashville, Tennessee. Her story is that she's a storyteller. And she has beginnings of being born in Paris, France, to moving to New York, to moving to London, and now residing in Nashville, Tennessee. She is a ghostwriter with 15 years experience, with the last 4 being primarily on ghostwriting. And she will go into her accolades and whatnot. I'll let her do that. So in all that moving, you'll get a lot of detail about her own story, and that's what we're all about, right? So, Alee, welcome.
Thank you so much, G and Bree. I didn't realize your names rhymed until I just said them out loud, so that's a thrill. But thank you guys so much. You know, I have wanted to be a writer ever since I could hold a pen. You know, I got a ton of encouragement when I was a kid from my mom, and not so much from my dad. It was very interesting dynamics because he wanted to be a writer too. It felt a little bit like a competition from the time I was 14. So I ended up at Emerson College, where I learned to be a storyteller. I thought I was going to be a journalist, and my journalism teacher pulled me aside second semester and said, "You're too creative for this." And I said, "I'm not okay anymore." So, I decided to go into creative writing, but, you know, I was locked into this mentality that I was throwing away my future by going into creative writing. I truly believed that meant I was going to be poor, homeless, lonely, sad, childless, you know, like living in dumpster clothes. Like, that's what I thought happened when you became a writer. But for me, you know, I worked in publishing for some time following my time at college. And then a friend tried to talk me into ghostwriting. And I was like, girl, if I'm going to write a book, it's going to be for myself. And then I tried it, and I was like, wow, this is what life is like when you live your passion. I couldn't believe how I woke up every morning and just felt lit on fire, you know, for what I was doing. And then I know you said you planned to go into this, but a tragedy that I experienced in my life turned into a full pivot of my business, where I now solely focus on working with victims of trauma and those journeying through grief.
Absolutely. And that's why, you know, Bree and I are really fortunate to have you, because we want to have people understand that storytelling and getting your story out there, being first responders and military and nurses, doctors, you know, so on and so forth, that it's very cathartic. It's very freeing to put your words that are in your head on paper, you know, and you are the avenue that provides that service. And, you know, now you're at a 6-figure salary. However, you didn't start there. And I think I think your own story is absolutely incredible. So, you know, there was something that you said that really, really stuck out to me, you know, before we got on the air. And it was, I drank to regain balance. And that really, really struck a chord, because, you know, myself has dealt with that. And I know many others listening and watching now have. So speak to that a little bit. What usually drinking is to escape, not to, you know, regain anything. It's to lose something, you know, that thought, that process. So what do you mean by that?
So I lived as an undiagnosed bipolar person for my entire life. I had no idea that I was bipolar. And, you know, my family went through a really, really rough patch. And in that, it was kicking my mania up, but I had no idea what that was. So I woke up every day feeling like I was lost in my own body. I was like, I could not grasp a single thought. And it started to show up most noticeably in my writing. And so I drank, and I could drink way more than the normal person, because I was already just so freaking amped that it just would bring it down. So it was bringing down those feelings of mania, that loss of control. And, you know, in that, I feel like words saved my life, because that was the first indicator that something wasn't okay. When I couldn't I sent something that I wrote my mom about my cat. I wrote an essay about my cat. Arguably not my best piece. However, she looked at it and she was like, you know, this is not you. Like, something is going on. and really, yeah. So the drinking thing was just about trying to bring my energy level down to a point where I could just function.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, there was a time in your life where your parents, your dad was an alcoholic, and he kind of drove the family down into this state of, you losing everything, the house, all your family's money, and just basically what you knew you did not have anymore. And so,
Right.
Your dad becomes homeless. Your mom, I'm guessing, separates from him and is now in her own apartment and working 3 jobs and whatnot. So that split, when did that happen? Was that when you were in New York, when you were in London? Where were you at?
I was actually in Nashville, and that was really difficult because I had a 2-bedroom apartment, and I could have very well had my dad move in with me. But then I had to decide, like, do I want to ruin my life to pull somebody out of the rock bottom that they got themselves into? Or do I want to just break from it and heal on my own? Because this was an atomic bomb that went off. And so, as you can imagine, I was still settling into my treatment as bipolar. And I just knew this was it. Like, this would just be gasoline on the fire for the hypomania that I was already kind of, that already was a tendency for me in moments of stress. So, yeah, I'd say the drinking definitely increased at that time. Like, of course, because everything, everything I knew was gone. Everything I knew. So, that absence where there was something so great, it was just devastating.
Absolutely.
So do you think that your emotional trauma, on top of your new mental disorder that you were diagnosed with, do you think that's why you really focus on emotional trauma as a ghostwriter?
Well, I don't know if you want to be the one to say to finish that part of my story, or if you're cool with me just kind of diving in.
Absolutely.
So what ended up happening actually was that my dad, now my father had been, he was the CMO of major companies, including the BBC, including some other very big conglomerates. And he went from that to living in a homeless shelter and working at a grocery store. And he ended up living in a sober living facility, but he was smart. I mean, I know he wasn't sober. Come on. So anyway, his dream had been to become a scuba diver, like a scuba diving instructor, because he had grown up in parts in Jamaica. So he trained in the Long Island Sound during the winter, and he got his diver's license. And he saved money. He saved enough money by working at the grocery store to get himself a one-way ticket to Belize. And he moved there under the pretense that he was sober. So he came to meet my first daughter when she was 6 months old. He came one time, then he came and saw her again one more time. He brought me a stuffed animal of mine that I had when I was a kid. We said goodbye. He moved to Belize, and I remember saying to my husband, I don't think I'm ever going to see him again. And I didn't. He passed away in 2017 on February 12th, and it was due to his drinking. He drank himself to the point where he couldn't walk, and then he took a fall in his apartment, and then we didn't know what to do, so we got him to a hospital in Belize, and he didn't make it out of there. So, a lot comes along with that. I was 5 days away from giving birth to my son, so I was out to here pregnant, trying to figure out how to get the corpse of my father out of a place that doesn't have coolers. It was and then all of a sudden life and death were just right there together, and it was just such a traumatic experience for me that I think that's where it was born, because I realized in time, and I'm pretty quick on the uptake with things. I'm an action oriented person. So I joined a grief group, and within 3 weeks I was leading the grief group, and I did that for 2 years and 3 years. And, I'm surrounded by women who have all lost their fathers. Actually, my best friend who lives across, one of my best friends who lives across the street, her father died 4 days ago. And, it's a crazy thing to shepherd someone through that. But I've realized that that's my purpose. And it's an odd thing to say that my father dying is the best thing that ever happened to me. It led me to my true purpose. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's very, very powerful to come to that realization, because you never hear that. Like my inspiration is that my father died. You don't really hear that. So thank you for sharing that. I do want to back up to a point in your life where you have support now. However, you felt like you didn't. And a lot of us first responders and military and whatnot feel that way. And, and it hits everybody. It's not just us, you not being in the field of a first responder. However, you still hit that same rock bottom that we hit, just in a different avenue. And so your rock bottom, I don't want to speak for you. However, us talking was the knife incident with, going to bed and your mom thankfully caught you. So tell us where you were at in your headspace at that time.
I think I was at the point where I would do anything to make what was going on stop. And that was a point where my parents' marriage had dissolved. And everybody was dealing with their own disorders privately. So he was drinking. My mom was just trying to keep it okay. My sister had her own stuff going on, and I was suffering so deeply, but I didn't know how to express it to anyone. And I think that is something that is true across the board of people dealing with things, including PTSD, trauma, etc. Like, you feel it's so stigmatized, right? That you almost, the society doesn't teach you the words that come along with this. Right? So you kind of either say something that you're afraid makes you sound crazy, but will maybe get you the help that you need, or you don't. And I just didn't, because truthfully, like, there was so much crap already going on that I didn't feel that there was space for what was happening. And also, once you've dealt with trauma and anxiety and all these spinning feelings for so long, it becomes almost normal, like static in your life. So you're like, oh, I'm just going to get through this day. It's going to be fine. But then as the day progresses, you're like, oh, I'm on my fourth drink, or, oh, I'm on my fifth Percocet, or whatever it is that you do to numb it. And so that was what happened to me. And that night when my mom caught me, I was at my wit's end, because it was like drinking wasn't helping anymore. Prescribed medication for anxiety wasn't helping anymore. And I thought, like, maybe cutting was an option for me, because it was like, this will give me something else to focus on, which sounds completely off the wall. But when you're going through something like that and the loss felt like it was like a slow fall, and we were right in the middle of it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story with us. It's incredible. 36, that's really young, and you've endured so much, and now you're in the growth side of your life, and the happier time of your life, with your kids and husband and whatnot. So, when you first started off as a journalist, a writer, and now you are a six-figure writer. How has it changed when you started off to now? Is it still, what you envisioned when you got into it, or has it been evolving into something else?
It's been evolving, because I think, we're always learning. And I think as soon as I realized that this was my niche, things just blew up. Around the time I lost my dad, I had a couple of months to, kind of still do some blogging, whatever it was that I was doing. But one of my first bigger writing projects, I mean, I had done several books before then, but one of my first projects with a bigger name, who I unfortunately can't talk about, was dealing with the death of a spouse. And that was my first real inroad into writing through trauma. And so, this person was broken when I met him. We started together at 9 months after he had lost his partner in an accident that he witnessed that was horribly traumatic. And we worked together for almost a year. And when I saw him come back to life through this work together, I was like, there is nothing else I can do with this talent. Nothing. And so watching him, you mentioned earlier that like it can be really cathartic to write, and it can be, and that is so true, but it's also really empowering to take the worst thing that ever happened to you and turn it into something so beautiful, turn it into something that's going to help others, and, in that particular instance, we were also bringing his husband back to life on the page. And I always say my job is to bring a loved one back to life on the page and make them immortal. I mean, what greater honor is there? And so after that, I just fully leaned into that niche, and I started writing for victims of violent crime, victims of abuse, whether that was childhood or at the hands of a spouse or loved one, and people who suffered from mental illnesses, undiagnosed, and things like that. And, in every single situation, the person has emerged on the other side healthier, better, more stable, and with a much better relationship to that trauma.
Yeah.
Alee, what I find so inspiring that you said is something that's so true is society doesn't tell you the words.
Yeah.
Right? They tell you to numb it. That's the message, right? You have to be all powerful, deal with anything that comes your way. But you as a storyteller, you have this really unique opportunity that you're saying, and it's as if you're a therapist, because you allow people to process. Society doesn't give us those words, but you give people the voice. And I think that is just, it's pretty incredible. Your specific job and talent really has made a huge impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's another quote that I love from Alee when we were speaking to her is, "My disorder stole my words." And that really stuck out to Bree and I, because it doesn't have to be a disorder. I mean, for you, yes. However, for first responders or military, it could be PTSD. It could be, just seeing something happen on a call or whatnot. So, don't get fixated on the disorder of that quote. It could be anything. It could be whatever you want it to be that can steal your words. And you are now in the position of helping others to regain their words, and that's how we kind of got in touch. So I'm really, really thankful that you fought out of, your disorder, and now you have, this platform that you get to help others. And I think that is very, very empowering to not yourself, but also your clients.
Well, and I also don't want to pretend that I don't still struggle. I want everyone to know that you can find a place for your PTSD, for your whatever is going on with you, for your trauma. Like, those things all can just, you can find a role for them in your life. It doesn't mean, very often these things don't end. Your relationship to them just changes. And so, I still have times where I'm working heavily with my psychiatrist because I feel like an insane person. But that's the healthy thing to do, is to like work with your team, get yourself back on track, and just maintain a level of self-awareness. But I think that the key for anybody listening to this or watching is that, the goal is not to make this disappear. The goal is to get yourself to a point where you're living with it, you're living well with it, and that you have a team of supporters who, when you start to slip, can help you get back on track.
Absolutely. You have your body of work is amazing. And one of the things that is amazing about it is the Holocaust stories that you write about. And that's one of your, specialties. So go into that, because that's my favorite kind of era of history. And I know, and Bree as well. You and Bree are like on the same wavelength, because she minored in, something to do with Judaism, and you minored in, Holocaust history. So I'll kind of step back a little bit, and you guys get a little girl talking right now. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I minored in Holocaust literature and comedy, which I think speaks volumes about my personality in general. But so, recently, actually, I worked with a client who, she really wanted to tell her parents' story as Holocaust survivors, but she herself had not heard it yet. And her family had a very close relationship with Steven Spielberg. So she got in touch with him and the Shoah Foundation. So I received all the materials from her parents' interviews for the foundation. So I myself painstakingly went through them and just listened to their stories. I lived with them through their experiences in Auschwitz and Birkenau, and how, I'm getting goosebumps even just thinking about it, and how they kind of lost each other and then found each other again. And the vast majority of that family survived. But my job in that was to take it and turn it into a big chunk of my client's of my client's memoir. And she had not been able to bring herself to watch the videos. So she actually, my telling of it on paper was her first ever foray into learning what her parents and her aunts and uncles had been through.
Wow.
So it was really, that part of my job is really intense, because very often they're seeing these things in black and white that they've never seen before. But regarding that, and there's some other projects that I've done that are not just Holocaust specific, but there are other experiences with other genocides. And truth be told, they are very unique stories because the reverberation is just generational. And so, I feel most privileged to step in and get to work with those pieces of history. And, I just feel so grateful for the Shoah Foundation for doing that project, because it allows me to get a window into my clients' lives that they can't even look through themselves. So it's like I'm able to be that buffer where I can sit there and take it in and write it and not be triggered by it. Although I am Jewish and, have family who is affected as well. But, I'm able to distance myself enough to be like, all right, I'm going to make this story beautiful, and I'm going to tell it. And the rough parts are going to be rough, but they're going to be true. And, I just journey through it with my client. And I mean, it's really, there aren't words to express what that's like,
Coming from the lady that her profession is words. She has no words.
Yeah, exactly. That's how powerful it is. I have no words.
Alee, kind of wrapping it up here. It's the one thing I really, really want to drive home is your experience and your willingness to work with your clients. And, if people listening right now, what message do you have for them if they're hesitant about telling their story or, reaching out for help? What message do you have to them that might be helpful to them at this moment?
I think the reality is the only way to fail at getting help is to not ask for it. And not having the language, not having the ability to express that cannot be your stopping point. Because, even if you don't have that best friend who has that language, join a community online and talk to somebody that can help you come up with that statement that you can bring to a loved one or a therapist or somebody to really explain what the situation is and paint a full picture. And that's my main thing when it comes to looking for help when you're in the midst of a huge struggle. In terms of being hesitant to share your story publicly, I think, the reality is what it is it depends on your relationship to your trauma and what you want your relationship to be. There isn't a right answer for everybody. But if you're somebody who feels this pull to help people with the thing that you experience, don't ignore that pull, because it's not coming from nowhere. It's this desire that is so baked in that if you don't do it, it won't leave you alone. So my advice is, it might not be me, but if you do want to do a project like this, look for a writer or look for a writing partner or a coach who is experienced in working with people who have experienced trauma or who are going through or who are journeying through grief. Because the reality is, we're not counselors and we're not therapists and we're not there to judge and tell you how to get better. We're here to walk with you through it and to help you flip the script on what happened. Like, my goal is to take something, maybe the worst thing that ever happened to you, flip the script on it and make it the best thing that ever happened to somebody else. Because they could open that book and see in those pages something that you experienced and trigger it in them, like, oh my gosh, I went through this too, and this person got it together to write this book, and like, who knows what they can see in it, but if you help one person, if you keep one person from taking a step towards suicide, self-harm, any of the above, then it's worth it. It's worth it. And the difference between a good book and a great book is honesty. And the best thing you can do is dig in and just tell your truth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
That was amazing. However, you're not going to get let off so easy.
Oh gosh, I'm freaking out.
Rightfully so. Rightfully so. So
no, a rapid fire is so scary.
She already knows what's coming up. She already knows. So Bree will ask you the questions. They are, there's some serious ones, there's some playful ones. So we'll see what you come up with. I'm very, very interested in to see what you come up with. So the rule is, Alee, one word or one phrase. That's it. One word or one phrase.
Yes.
Do you agree to these terms?
Okay, but what if I panic and think I've never heard words before when I get the first question? Can I?
No.
It has to be a word, right?
Yes, a word or a phrase.
One word.
Okay.
All right, Bree, you ready?
Yeah.
I'm freaking
All
out.
right, Bree will take over.
Okay, your first question. This is an easy one, okay? Who is your favorite author, or what is your favorite book?
Augustin Burroughs is my favorite author, and my favorite book he wrote was A Wolf at the Table.
Okay.
I did
Number two, what is your biggest fear?
Snakes.
Bree has a snake. Bree has two snakes.
I do.
Get those away from me.
Okay, number three. If you had to choose to be a first responder, what type of first responder would you be?
I want. This is a lot. I have too many words. Okay.
Okay, so you can pick firefighter, paramedic, a police officer, military, branch of the military.
Police officer.
All right.
Search and rescue. Like, I want to find them. I want to get in there, and I want to be the one who finds the person who's in trouble.
Take that. Okay. Ustar, search and rescue. That's a good answer.
Gee, stop judging me for these number of words. I see your face. You can't, like.
Okay, number four. What is the weirdest food that you have ever eaten?
Is not a food.
It's okay. I ate foie gras once and I feel terrible about it still. It's not weird, it's cruel.
Okay.
And last one. What is one word to describe storytelling?
Transformative.
I like
Love
that
it.
one. That's awesome.
All right.
Alee,
It wasn't that bad, Alee.
Yeah, you did great. I mean, that we might have to edit that out.
I'm sweating. Like, I'm like sweat. I have like sweat on my face, and I'm like I have a little tears.
Yeah. Well, to that point, that's your life. You struggled, you've made it out, and just that was a part of your life, and now you're here.
This was my biggest challenge.
Alee, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Your authenticity, your vulnerability just powerful woman, speaks volumes to your character. And, you know, we've only known each other for a little bit amount of time, and the amount that you've already shared with us is absolutely amazing. And thank you again so much for coming on.
Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I had shared earlier that this is the perfect time. February is the anniversary of my dad's passing. And so I feel like, you know, this is my 4th year. And I had said to you guys, I feel like I now have a bachelor's degree in grief. And, you know, it's just a great way to celebrate the fact that that was the thing that really kicked me into my living my passion. And I miss my dad. I'm sad about it. But this whole thing has been a huge gift.
Absolutely. All right, guys, this is Project Mayday. Call out.
I finally